Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joel Amidon.
And I'm Ann Monroe.
Welcome to The Road to Better Teaching, where we share stories of professional growth from across the field of education. Dr. Monroe, we're really pushing these out there, aren't we?
We are. I feel like I've been on an everlasting podcast the last 2 weeks, but that's good.
That's good. It is good. It's good when we have good people to talk to, like our guest, Bryanna Hall. Bryanna, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are y'all?
Great.
Good. So, Bryanna, you want to give a little bit of background first about
Sure.
who you are and what your experience has been in education?
Yeah, sure. So, like Dr. Amidon said, my name is Bryanna Hall, and I am from outside of Memphis. And I went to Ole Miss for my undergrad and my master's programs. I got both my degrees in elementary education. And then I taught kindergarten and second grade reading for 4 years in Collierville, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Memphis. And now I'm back in the PhD program in teacher education at Ole Miss once again. And I also have worked for Dr. Amidon, and I am now working for Dr. Monroe. So just the best connections that you could hope to make.
What do you know?
So she had to come on the podcast. She had to say those things.
Right.
No.
They signed my checks.
Hey, let's go back though. You worked with me. You did a 2-year program with the masters.
Mm-hmm.
Smart, right? Because you did all your work during the school year, so you didn't have to pay for any classes, which is
Correct.
brilliant.
Yeah, it was free.
And it was during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So you were there, and I mean, a crucial part of me figuring out what we were going to do, like, because you took my classes, so you're like, okay, how do we take Amidon's classes and help him do it? It was during the spring when things were happening. Like, hey, how do we pivot this class?
Yeah.
And then how do we go forward? That was a big experience. I don't know.
Yeah, that was definitely a crazy time, especially just with technology for that being kind of everybody's first time in that situation. For students, professors, faculty, it was definitely a lot. But I think we adjusted well, and then I think it set us up well for the next year of remote learning.
Absolutely. And also too, I don't know if you knew these, Dr. Monroe, like when I start working with a grad assistant, I talk about like, what's your goal? And I think, Bryanna, your goal was to work at the district, which you eventually got a job for, correct?
Yes.
And they don't hire new teachers. And
Correct.
so she was like, I'm going to come up with a plan that'll allow them to easily hire me. And like, what was that plan? I mean, seriously, this was really good.
When Bryanna makes a plan, it usually happens. So this is not surprising, but I want to hear how this went.
Yeah.
Well, it's really hard to get your foot in the door in this district. And I mean, obviously COVID was a struggle for many reasons, but it did afford me the opportunity to start subbing. And because of all of the rules and policies with testing positive, social distancing, at the time, you had to be out for 10 days. And so every school always needed subs, and I was fortunate enough to be able to substitute teach the second semester that I was finishing my master's, and then continue that into my second full year of my master's. So by the time I got ready to look for a job, I had already established relationships with administrators in several of the elementary schools there, and I had a job offer before graduation, which was a relief to say the least. And it was in lower elementary where I wanted to be, and everything just kind of fell into place, I think, the way it was meant to. But I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to sub as much as I did. Otherwise, I'm not sure it would have worked out quite as well.
The old COVID loophole. Fantastic. It's got at a terrible time, but took advantage. It was able to, help out really the school.
Yeah.
And then it advantaged you. That's awesome.
Even I substituted during, was it Omicron, that surge is when I tried to be a sub. I think I subbed in for one of the students or one of the classes where your child was in, Dr. Monroe.
Oh, that's right. That was like in the 2021 school year that year. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right.
Bryanna, here's something. Just what is something fun, something outside of education about yourself that helps us get to know you a bit better? And if you don't say the thing that I'm thinking of, I'll make you say it. So,
Oh gosh, I don't know. Um, I don't know what you're thinking, and I'm afraid to say it. So I'm going to pivot, and then you can tell me if I need to say something else. Um, well, another grad assistant and I, Emily, are getting really into pickleball, and
hey,
yeah, we've entered a tournament next week.
Oh,
whoa,
Yeah.
this
wait.
is oh,
Goat yoga and pickleball. These two
Yes.
just
Yes.
participated in some goat yoga I know about and pickleball. Quite the combination.
Yes. Our team name is the Slice Girls. So,
oh, nice. Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
you have to tell me when you're playing.
It's next Friday. It's for graduate and professional students. And
Oh,
Emily and
funny.
I have played together twice. So this will go really, really well.
but I do know how competitive you are. And
Yeah. I
so
told her, I was like, we need to practice.
that's all. That's not even what I was going for because I had no idea about that. I was
Hmm.
going to say that you are about as inside on college football, like
Oh,
coaching
yes.
moves and players and like I was like we were sitting around a table having lunch and I was like you knew more about like when coaches this was pre Lane Kiffin leaving like you had some inside I felt like I was sitting next to an ESPN insider. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, I actually felt like I had the inside track with Brianna this past football season, filling us in on all the things, and she'd say, "Ah, just wait for this. This is going to happen," and then it would. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my reading for fun is like the ESPN blogs and articles to see what's going on. So
Nice, nice.
hopefully this season goes well. And
Yeah,
I will be looking forward to that game versus LSU in Oxford in September.
nice. Yes, that
For
that is
sure.
that's going to be one to batten down the hatches for. All right, here we go. So should we get to it? Here we go. The interview countdown. All right, we're going to get started.
Okay.
Little countdown to set the scene. Bryanna, can you name 3 educators who have shaped you as a person?
Absolutely. So there's definitely more than 3, but when I think about the 3 most influential, they kind of span my whole time in K-12 and then even into my teaching career. So the first, it was my first grade teacher. Her name is Miss Linda Gale Douglas, and we called her Miss Linda Gale. And I changed schools going into first grade, and I went from a pretty strict school to a school that was a little bit more free for younger students. And I remember feeling like I had like woken up in heaven. It was just, I
Oh
could
wow.
talk in class and we got to play and do arts and crafts. And it was just, I felt free. And I feel like she really just developed my love of learning just in a way that hadn't been reached yet. She would have us do book reports and you could do as many as you wanted. And I loved to go to the library and just do book report after book report. And this other little girl and I would get in a competition over who could do the most. And I distinctly remember I
It's
got
so
so
Brianna.
irritated.
Yeah.
I got so irritated and I'm over it now, despite what it may sound like. But she would read shorter books than me to do more book reports. And I was like,
How
this
dare
is
she?
bogus. I was like, she needs to read the same length book. But I just remember thinking that was so fun. And then the next teacher was my 11th grade anatomy teacher, and also she was my 12th grade forensic science teacher. Her name is Jamie Schneider. And again, I changed schools going into 11th grade, and it was a huge shock to the system. This school was very, very college preparatory focused in a way that I hadn't experienced. It was my first time in AP courses, and I just was really and truthfully overwhelmed by the environment and how competitive it was. And I had her first period anatomy, and the rumor around the school was like, oh, this is the hardest class that there is. You're going to struggle. I felt underprepared. And I just really, I don't know if it was because I was new and she knew how overwhelmed I was, but she really kind of just took me under her wing and helped me grow more than I ever could have foreseen at the beginning of the year. And that became one of my favorite classes. And then I took her forensic science class my senior year as an elective because I enjoyed learning from her so much.
Like
And her,
CSI, forensic science?
Yes, she would set up crime scenes around the school and we would get to
Oh my
go
gosh, that
solve
is
it. It was so cool. We
Wow,
would
that's
fingerprint,
awesome.
like dust for fingerprints. We would fingerprint each other. It was so cool.
oh wow.
And prior to that, I didn't think I considered myself not quote unquote good at science. And so the fact that I willingly took a science elective senior year really kind of shows
Yeah.
she definitely was a positive impact. And then the third teacher would be Ashley Self. She was a kindergarten teacher at the first school that I taught at. And she was kind of my first teacher bestie. My first year teaching was a bit unique. One, it was COVID, but I also got surplused a couple days before school started. And so the school I was originally hired at ended up not having enough kindergartners register to justify the number of kindergarten teachers that they had hired. And being the newest teacher in the building, I was the teacher that had to go to a different school. And so Thursday afternoon, before school started, I found out I was moving to a new school. I took my room down and
Oh.
drove
Wow.
across town to the other school. And when I got there, I didn't know what I was going to teach. I didn't know anybody. And I walked in and they said, "You're going to be in kindergarten," which was a blessing because that's what I had been hired for. So that's what I was prepared for. And Ashley was just the person who immediately ran up to me, gave me a hug, was like, "I'm so sorry. I know this must be so overwhelming. What can I do to help you?" And then from that day on, she was just constantly like in my corner checking to see what do I need, how can she help. It was obviously a quick turnaround to go from Thursday afternoon. I had Friday to set up my classroom and then school started Monday. So
Wow.
she was just such a positive person for me and she would stay late to help me. She would forego stuff she needed to do to come help me get stuff done. And I just can't thank her enough for all that she did for me because that was crazy and I didn't know that that could happen to you until it happened to me. But I think everything happens for a reason and it worked out because otherwise I wouldn't have ever met her. So it was,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it was definitely unconventional, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
Yeah.
learned a
that's a
lot.
crazy change, like last minute change.
It was crazy. It definitely was unexpected. But like I said, I just consider it a blessing that I was fortunate enough to keep the same grade level that I was originally hired for. Because other times, it doesn't happen often, but other times that it has happened, people have moved from, kindergarten to third or fourth or vice
Yeah,
versa,
very
and that's a
different.
completely different
Yeah.
ball game. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
Uh, so, two reasons or events that led you to become an educator.
Okay. The first, I think, would just be growing up. I would say I would credit my parents, especially my mom. My mom always really encouraged me to read. She read to me from the time she found out she was having me until I could read to myself. And she would prioritize taking me to the library. I absolutely loved going to our town's library and just sitting in the children's literature area and reading book after book. And it didn't matter if I, wanted to check books out on a day that was busy or a day when she had something else going on. She really made it a priority to get me to the library so that I could keep developing my interest in reading. And that just really kind of continued throughout my time in school. And I think it benefited me in so many ways, but it really just helped me as a student. And then because I loved reading and I loved learning, I think that just followed me to the point where I realized this is something I want to do for other people. And
Mm.
this is something I want to cultivate in my students is a love for learning and a love for reading because I know how special that was for me. And then the second would be, like I previously mentioned, transferring high schools. Transferring when you're 16 is really intimidating. And I went from a class of about 50 students to a class of about 250, which is a pretty big change. I'd only been at one school since kindergarten, since I moved after kindergarten. So I knew the 50 kids in my grade. I knew their families, I knew their brothers, their sisters, I knew everything about them. And so to switch to a grade of 250, where you're kind of a small fish in a big pond, was definitely intimidating. The environment was really competitive, and I just had a few teachers like Miss Schneider who really poured into me and showed me that I was capable of doing more than I thought possible. At the time, I knew I would probably go to college, but I wasn't planning on attending necessarily a 4-year university. I wasn't planning on going out of state for school. None of those thoughts were on my radar. And they really showed me that those things were possible. And not only were they possible, but that those were things that I could be successful in.
Wow. I mean, yeah, the opening up possibilities. I mean, it seems like both those, like for the reading or from your own educational experiences, those are pretty good. Then be able to want to do that for others as well. Awesome. The mile marker or moment. So one moment to mark on your journey of growing as an educator. So what moment would you pick to talk about here on the podcast?
So I thought a lot about it. I talked with Emily, who's been on a previous episode of y'all's podcast, just to kind of think about what really stands out to me. And when I think back on my teaching, what are like the few things that really matter most? And I picked one moment from my very first year teaching. And I had a student who came in, again, like I said, it was COVID, but came in unable to recognize or write their own name. And this was kindergarten. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed by the prospect of how do you teach a child what their name is, how to identify their name, and then how to write their name, especially with the curriculum not really incorporating that into the daily lessons. There was kind of this expectation that that's something that they should already come in knowing. So
Like
it
that's
wasn't
kindergarten ready is
right.
that
Yeah.
okay.
So there wasn't like a daily lesson of, oh, let's sit down and practice how to write our name and how to identify our name. And as a first year teacher, I think you kind of feel pressured to follow the curriculum to a T. You don't want to be going off script because you don't know really what you're doing yet. Everything's kind of a learning experience those first few years, but especially that first year. And so I remember being nervous to deviate from the curriculum and unsure of how to really meet her where she was at. And then a couple weeks into school, I just decided she and I were going to have to sit down together every day for 15 to 20 minutes, and we were going to have to work on identifying and writing her name until she got it. And I had no clue how long that was going to take. I had really no clue where to start because she didn't have any knowledge of letter like shapes or sounds or anything like that. And so it was really, we were starting from square one. And so I just did what I thought was best and kind of scaffolded for her. We started with just identifying her name from like a couple choices so she could visually start to recognize her name. And then I would write her name in marker and have her trace it. And I would get out shaving cream and write her name in the shaving cream, and she would copy. We would build it out of Legos. We would build it with Play-Doh, whatever kind of brought in a sensory or kinesthetic aspect with the content is really what I was trying to do. And we would do this for 15 to 20 minutes every single morning. And then right before fall break, so October, she called me over to her desk and she had written her name on her paper for the first time from memory. And I cried, like in the classroom. I got teary and I cried. I was so proud of her. And that just really stands out to me because I've taught a lot of kids and I've taught a lot of kids different things, but to teach a child their name and how to write and read their name, that just is so special to me because that's them. That's who they are. And so to be able to help her with that is just so special. And so that's what I picked.
Bryanna, how unusual is it for a kindergartner to come in and not recognize their name? I know some kindergartners might not be able to write their name really well, or they might, they're with their motor skills and that type of thing. But I would say most incoming kindergartners can recognize their name. When they see it, they say, that's my name.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how unusual is that? And then what does that tell you about what was happening with that child prior to kindergarten?
It's definitely unusual, especially with the prevalence of preschool nowadays, which I personally would be an advocate for preschool for all students because I think it is so important. because the way kindergarten is structured now, kindergarten really is the new first grade. So when you think back on what your time in kindergarten was like, where you were learning shapes and you were learning to count and you were learning your name and to tie your shoes and things like that, that really, a lot of that is expected before you start kindergarten, that you at least have some concept of a few of the letters, or you know your alphabet song, you can count to 5, you know your name. Maybe it's not, you've got your letter reversals still going on, but you can write it relatively legibly. And that's kind of just where we've progressed, I think, past the point of kindergarten really is an intense year of school now. By the end of kindergarten, they're expected to recognize over 100 sight words. They're expected to be able to write a simple sentence. And those are things that used to be more aligned with first grade.
First grade skills, right? Yeah.
So it's definitely progressed. It's definitely a lot more complex than I think people realize, especially if you're not in the school and you're not teaching or you don't have a kindergartner. You might think, oh, like this is something they're going to just learn in kindergarten, and that's not the case. And it makes it difficult for the student, and it also makes it difficult for the teacher because you've just got such a wide range of abilities. Like the year that I had this student, I also had students who came in already writing 2 complete sentences on the first day of kindergarten. They could write, "My name is blank. I like blank," and with correct spelling, correct punctuation, all of it. So you really have to be adaptable and be able to differentiate because you're going to have such a wide range of abilities. And I think it just is an indicator of maybe the student needs additional help outside of the school day. Maybe they need additional help at home, but you have to recognize that that help might not always be available for a variety of reasons. Parents either don't know how to provide this help or they're unable to provide the help. And if you're working all day or you think that this is a kindergarten skill, your child might not have that background knowledge that a lot of kindergarten students are beginning the year with.
And I know there are a lot of schools and communities where there's not just one student that comes in not knowing any letters or numbers or their name or recognizing their name, where there are many students in a classroom. So the amount of time you spent with that one student thinking about, there are some teachers and some school districts where the vast majority of their kindergartners are in that same predicament, where they're coming in and they're not school ready yet. They don't have those foundational literacy skills that a lot of kids are lucky enough to get at home. And again, sort of supporting your idea about the importance of that universal preschool. Because while you may have had one student, there are some teachers who have an entire classroom of students that need that kind of care and time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the expectations don't change just because you have 14 or 15 students who come in and maybe 10 of them are not kindergarten ready. The expectations for the end of kindergarten going into first grade that are laid out by your state are still the same. And so that's where you see it's unfortunate, and you don't want kids to start falling behind in kindergarten, in first grade, where it's like they came in with maybe a little bit of those foundational reading skills, but there's so much that they're expected to learn that it's like you're just chasing and chasing and chasing. And then I feel like it just gets overwhelming for them pretty quickly with how fast things start to progress.
Yeah.
Well, but too, I guess from your experience, that I like to point out is like, it's not like you could have slowed things down for this student versus like, no, this student needs an extra dose of something, right? So the extra 15 minutes. And I think that was a big, aha moment when I was learning to be a teacher. It's like, I think that was when RTI, or response to interventions, were happening, where it was like, it turned the impetus from, it was almost like there's something wrong with the student, to know what can we do to support a student's needs. And it was like, well, like, and we've seen this in our own classes, right? Where like if I have a student that's in my elementary math methods class and they're having difficulties like writing objectives or teaching a problem, how to do like a real messy problem in a lesson. It's not like, well, I'm going to slow them down and everything, like we'll really, versus like, no, they need some extra help, extra support so they can get that, so that they have everything that they need going into the next course or going out into the field. And I don't know, I think there's something about that little shift there, of thinking that was an aha to me, but maybe it's not as much to others.
Well, and I think it was just speaking with this student, interacting with this student, you knew it was a case, or at least I knew it was a case of she was capable. If she just could get the time and the commitment of, we're going to sit together and we're going to go over this, like I just remember feeling like you're going to get it. It might take us weeks or a couple of months, but like eventually it's going to start to click. And when it did, it was, I mean, like they say light bulb moment, and it really was a light bulb moment, because from there she really took off with her reading and her writing. And now in the grade that she's in now, she's one of the highest performing students in her ELA class, which is amazing to see. And so it was just really a lack of exposure.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's not set up for students to necessarily come in without that knowledge. And so then as the teacher, just trying to figure out, how can I commit to consistent exposure for these skills and concepts for them, while also still making sure that I am teaching the curriculum and that I am growing the students who maybe were already above grade level when they came in.
And it sounds like there's some parallels with Emily's story. I mean, from the last episode
Yes.
too,
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
good. It's really good. What is an artifact you would choose to represent this moment, right? So what's something tangible you could point to, like kind of like a souvenir of the moment? It might not be something that you could have on hand, but like, what would you, if you could?
So it might not be that particular moment. Well, in the moment, it would be her writing her name on her paper, and then just like, I remember we had journals in kindergarten, and she would just doodle her name in her journal from there on out. Like she loved to show that she could write it.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that I did with my kindergarten class, we would publish a book at the end of the year. So there's this organization called Student Treasures Publishing, and you can order a free kit from them, and they'll mail it to you. You tell them if you want your book to be portrait or landscape, and then you design the cover, and each student gets an illustration page and then an author page, and they can write a story or write about whatever the topic is and then illustrate it. And so we did a book called My Life in Kindergarten, and I had them write about what they liked about kindergarten and what they were hoping first grade was like. And she wrote about how she liked reading and she liked learning, and that she was excited for first grade. And she wrote multiple sentences on her own in this book that we then had published. And I have the hard copy of the book, because they give the teacher a book for free. And so I have those from my kindergarten years that have all my students writing in them, which is really special.
Oh, that is nice.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, and the parents can then order it, which, parents ate that up. They love to order those books, and they were really cute.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll put a link in the show notes for that one. Just on shameless plug for Student Treasures Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this moment important for you and your growth as a teacher?
I think the biggest thing was just realizing that the curriculum isn't necessarily going to do everything that you need it to do, and that it's still important to follow it, but you really have to be willing to navigate outside of it at times, because you're going to have students who have needs that the curriculum simply isn't equipped to meet based on that grade level. And like I said, as a first year teacher, that was really intimidating at first, because I didn't want to feel like, or I didn't want other people to think that I was just kind of going rogue or that I thought I knew better. But once I kind of accepted that this isn't going to get her where we need her to be, that was almost empowering in a sense, especially once I saw that around fall break, she really was able to start writing her name and things started clicking for her. So once I saw the payoff, it was like I had that data point almost that I could refer to and say, like, look, this is working. Yeah, we might have started 15 minutes later than the curriculum says to start, or we might have done 15 minutes less in our reading block so that I could work with her. The other students might have been in centers for those times, but it's worth it because she's seeing the payoff, and these other students are still growing and they're still progressing.
What an amazing first part of your teaching career. Like, kind of that, hey, this is actually working. We kind of like that. That's pretty, I mean, just to see like, hey, I'm investing in this person. I'm seeing it's paying off. And now I have that locked in going in like, okay, I'm going to make some choices. My agency is here and I feel like it actually is useful. I mean, that seems strange to say that, but it's like that, what encouragement that is going into that first year of teaching.
Yeah, it really shaped how I approached the rest of the time that I was in the classroom. Because like I said, it was empowering and it made me feel like I don't have to be afraid to try something different or to maybe limit this one aspect of a lesson and introduce a different topic because I have the confidence to try it, see if it's going to work, and then kind of pivot from there. You don't have to necessarily take the curriculum and stand up there and read it like a script the way sometimes it's written.
Yeah. So why do you think this moment is important to the wider field of education? And then we can connect this to some of those in-task standards that we know and love.
So the biggest thing I think is just the importance of meeting kids where they're at. They're all going to be at different spots when they come into your classroom. They're all going to have different things that have influenced how they got to where they are. And you just have to figure out where they are and then go to that place. Like you can't expect every student to be on the same level. That's just not going to happen. Not realistic, especially in classrooms today, because you've got students who have been fortunate enough to have that prior knowledge activated through things like preschool or enrichment experiences. And then you have students who, for a variety of reasons, have not had that exposure. And it really does start as early as preschool, kindergarten, where you start to see these students are having more difficulty because of the lack of exposure. And so you just have to meet them where they're at, and be willing to try different things and do what it takes to help them grow. And their growth might not look the same as the student next to them, but that doesn't mean it's not growth.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is that the pressure of pacing in schools can be a lot for new teachers, and you have to kind of roll with it in the sense of don't be afraid to maybe be a lesson behind, or don't be afraid to take a lesson over the course of 3 days, even if it was only supposed to take one, because you're going to be in there with your students. You're going to see, are they getting it? Where are the gaps? What are they still not understanding? And don't move on without them if they're not
Yeah.
ready. Like it doesn't do any good to keep progressing if you're leaving, the majority of your students behind, because those gaps are only going to continue to grow.
Yeah, it makes matters worse, really.
Yeah. The bus is on time. Nobody's on it, but it's on time.
Yeah.
We've moved it along.
Yeah.
And I know you talked about earlier about before we hit record, like maybe hitting standard 2 and really what you talking about learning differences. Dr. Monroe, did you see any other connections that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, I think standard 4 content knowledge. The teacher understands the central concepts, tools of inquiry, and structures of the discipline he or she teaches and creates learning experiences that make this discipline accessible and meaningful. Just the understanding of knowing that those foundational skills are so important. What comes first? What is it that has to come first before a child can go to the next level? And, that child was not ready for what was happening in kindergarten. And the content that she needed was that basic content, and having her grasp that ability to write her name and understand the letters and the sounds and even just letter recognition is the building block. And that's knowing the content, right? You know what content is important and how you need to build those skills for the students.
Yeah, and that last part, the assuring the mastery of the content, right? Like,
Right.
that's what you want her to exit with. But also, too, I thought it was, kind of, you said it, but like just to point it out, like when you're doing this with this student, it wasn't like it sounded like there was like stations going on or centers that were going on at the same time. So it's like,
Yeah, everybody else was still learning.
Right.
They weren't off the hook.
Yeah. It wasn't
Yeah.
free for all. They weren't,
Yeah.
they're,
Gosh, in kindergarten it might have been, but
but I mean, like that's, and to not, maybe there was more direct instruction with this student where you're doing these direct activities, but then you've created these other areas and environments that you're facilitating them interacting with other areas to continue to grow and learn. And you're teaching them all, yet there's different ways that you're teaching them all at the same time. There's some brilliance there with regards to the teaching. I mean, I had a chance to experience this in the first grade classroom when I would go in and help my daughter out, and just seeing like it was like a 3-ring circus going on, and some kids were getting some direct instructions, some kids were doing some things on Khan Academy. I was facilitating that. Some kids they were playing games. All were around this same concept. It was like to see it done well and to see all the engagement that's happening all at the same time is amazing, and getting kids what they need is, so I mean, even that, like the planning instruction or the creating a learning environment is, I mean, there's something there as well.
yeah. So just as an example, one of the things that I liked to do as one of my stations or centers, it was a writing station, but I called it the bump up wall. And so I had different examples of writing taped to the wall. And so like it might be a 1, you could give it a numeric system, you could give it a letter, a smiley face to like a shooting star, however you want to kind of level it. But the first one was kind of like the basic expectation for kindergarten, which might be a CVC word with a picture that goes with the word. So dog, and then something that looks like a dog.
Consonant,
and then,
vowel, consonant.
Yeah, I was going to say CVC for those that don't know is consonant, vowel, consonant.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then kind of bumping up to maybe a phrase like dog ran, and then it looks like a dog running. And then just it progressed all the way up to a complete sentence with a picture that matched. So I see the brown dog running. And then there's a brown dog running and a kid watching it in the picture. And like I said, it was called the bump up wall. And so the kids always liked to do their first kind of draft of their writing, and then they would bring it to me and see where is it on the bump up wall, and then they would go back and figure out how can they bump it up to the next. I used like a smiley face, a star, and a rainbow or whatever because I didn't like numbers and letters. But so like how can I go from the smiley face to the rainbow kind of thing.
It's a great way to differentiate, but everybody gets an opportunity.
Yeah, and they really liked it. And they could also, they knew minimum what they needed to be doing, but it also gave them the opportunity to challenge themselves without me having to necessarily like be right there with them constantly saying like, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? They kind of had that, almost that critical thinking of like, what do I have and where do I need to go? And then how am I going to get there? And they really liked that station. And then I had stamping stations where they're like stamping out different spelling patterns and using those spelling patterns in a sentence. And then I'm also a big fan of free reading time. I think students should be able to explore books that interest them. And so my library was like a free reading time where it was sorted by genre and then reading level. And so they could go over there and choose books that were of interest to them. And then that was what they were doing over there. And then they also, one thing little kids especially really love to do are what I called book review sheets. And so it would just have stars at the top, and they would color in however many stars, like they were rating the book. And then for kindergarten, they would draw a picture of their favorite part of the book. And so that was a way to kind of encourage that. Yeah. Again, going back to book reports, I guess this has been a theme my entire life, but they really liked it. And it was funny because they would be honest. They would put, this is a 1-star book. Like this book wasn't for me, or this was a 5-star book.
I always, one of my favorite times in my classroom, my 3rd grade classroom, was we called it drop everything and read deer time. And it was my students' favorite time of the day, without question, and also my favorite time. And I have heard people complain about that type of time, saying it's wasteful and that kind of thing. It's absolutely not wasteful. The students enjoyed, even the students who are, sort of going through the motions of reading and maybe don't get as much done as some others. It's demonstrating the practice. It's, showing enthusiasm for those quiet moments when it's a choice the students make about what they're reading, or they have some enjoyment. They get enjoyment out of reading, and you're demonstrating and modeling for them that reading can be a joy. And I think that just that alone is important. And there's space for that in the classroom.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important to, and I was definitely fortunate to have people donate books to me. Also, shout out Goodwill Bookstore. If you have a Goodwill Bookstore near you, you can get books for so cheap.
Yes.
And I would ask my students, like, hey, what are books that you think you would like to read, or what's something you think you would like to read about? Because I, grew up with Barbie books and Mary Kate and Ashley books and American Girl Doll. And so for the boys, I'm like, what would you like to read? And so I would go out and find books about lizards and baseball and whatever. And they really were into the like who would win books. They like to look at the
Yes.
pictures. And they really like the ones about snakes, which I don't know, that freaked me out. But I was like, if that's going to get you to sit and read and look, even if you're looking at the pictures, it's still reinforcing print concepts, which is a huge part of early literacy. Like, how do I hold a book? How do I track print from left to right? How do the pictures relate to the words in the story? So,
and struggling readers want an opportunity to participate as well. And when you have books that are level, that are something they can enjoy and get something out of it, makes it even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's a book for everybody. Yeah. Okay. Here's a test. What's your current pocket size philosophy?
Okay, so I actually have changed it quite a bit over the years. Yeah. I mean, it's still, I think the essence of it is the same, in that I do care about building relationships with students, and I do care about, are they learning? Are they growing? But I've kind of adapted it to be even more pocket sized, especially Emily's was so pocket sized. I was like, that's so cool. I need to come up with one that is also just, easy to kind of just pull out and say. And so my current one that I feel happy with is know them and grow them.
There we go. That relationship part, and then the content part. I love that. So how does your mile marker continue to influence that philosophy and your ongoing journey?
So, like I've mentioned multiple times, and if you couldn't tell, I really love literacy, and I love all things to do with reading. And so I think it just reminds me that all children are capable of learning and they deserve to be set up for success. So really kind of encouraging that in the conversations that I have with student teachers or new teachers. And then it's also kind of led me towards a potential dissertation topic, looking at how teachers adapt reading curriculum to meet the needs of their struggling readers. So what are teachers doing? How are they deviating from the curriculum says ABC, but maybe I need to go completely a different direction? And how is that working for them? And then also, how do they feel supported in that? Because I feel fortunate that my school administration encouraged and trusted me to do what my students needed. They were like, if this is what you think they need, then do it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, then try something else. But I would anticipate that that's probably not the case for everyone out there. And so how can teachers be more supported in the adaptations that they're making? Because we are professionals. We went to school for this. And everything might not work perfectly on the first try, but you do have a level of expertise that I think holds a lot of value. So how can you take that expertise and use it to the benefit of all your students?
Yeah, I think we've gone in a direction, which some good directions with, making sure that our instructional materials are of quality, but we've gone into a bit of a direction of not trusting the professional that's sitting there, the person that's sitting there with the students that know them best. And we're putting curriculum in front of the professional before the professional, choosing that before the professional. I think it's somewhat problematic.
because
So I'm excited about this dissertation
yeah,
idea.
Yeah,
'cause
Dr. Monroe's my dissertation chair.
there
What do
you
you
So
go.
know?
Look at that. Very good. Good. Well, and then that ties back to your philosophy, right? Like, I mean, we can't just, hey, we're going to work on growing them. Wait, we got to know them first, and like, who's in position to do that? The teacher, and
right.
then they'll use the tools that they've been given in order to best grow their students. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, especially like in a kindergarten classroom, you are together for a long time, all day.
Yeah.
And so you really do know a lot about them, and I think that that should be trusted a little bit more than it is in some
Yeah.
places.
Yeah. That agency is very important. Any resource suggestions, even beyond the topic of this conversation?
So one program that my school used, and they have some free resources and Facebook pages and things like that that I would encourage anyone who wants to build strong relationships with students to go look at. It's called Capturing Kids' Hearts. It's CKH, and they are really phenomenal. The school that I taught at is actually being recognized this current school year for being like, I think they called it a showcase school, because they've really bought into the program and are really emphasizing those relationships with students. And so it'll give you resources for social emotional learning. It gives you resources for behavioral issues that might come up. And it really puts agency with the student. So one of the things that it would do is there's 3 or 4 questions that you ask the student every time, and then eventually the students can kind of ask the questions of themselves, and to where when something arises that might be problematic, they kind of already know, okay, what am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? And what am I going to do about it? And so they kind of just take that agency for themselves. My favorite part of it, you would always have a send off that you would say to students before they would leave your room. And so mine was always love you, bye. And so I had love you, bye above my classroom door. And it was just funny because even now I'll see them and they'll be like, okay, love you, bye. I'm like, all right, love you, bye. Like, it's just, they know that that's what I'm going to say to them.
That's awesome.
And they would say it back, and it would be like, okay, do you want a high five, a fist bump, a hug? Like, how are we going to leave today, regardless of the day that we had.
Right.
And I think CKH just really kind of encapsulates what it means to build healthy, strong, lasting relationships with students, of all backgrounds, of all cultures, all ages. It's not just a kindergarten or second grade thing. So I would encourage anybody to go take a look at it.
Nice. That's yeah. We'll put a link to that. Any thing else? Anne, did you have anything? I had a couple
Yeah.
things.
So when Bryanna was talking, we were talking about this kindergarten readiness and the importance of pre-K quality pre-K. It reminded me of a lady that I've read in the New York Times before, and it's been a hot second, so I had to look up the book. But she's got a book called "The Most Important Year: Pre-K and the Future of Our Children." Her name is Suzanne Beauford. I think it's Beauford. It's Bouffard. But she puts articles out, and I've read them before. But this book it's like a narrative. It tells stories about families trying to find quality pre-K, and sort of speaks to this importance of making sure we have, high quality pre-K for all students and why it's important. And it's just called "The Most Important Year: Pre-K and the Future of Our Children."
Yeah. Well, and the more and more I have someone close to me that's really into early childhood education, that we need we we need to make decisions to support pre-K because it's not a sustainable business. Yeah, like there needs to be public pre-K because if in order to be affordable, it's like you think about a business, you're like, oh, you got to just add more customers. Well, if you add more customers, you need a lot more people to watch those.
Yeah.
It's like
And this book actually touches on the pay that this is something that I know, Joel, that your wife has been looking at, like how the conditions around which early childhood professionals are working,
yeah,
and the pay issues and things like that, and how do we make it affordable. And so this book, it it speaks to that as well.
Yeah. Well, even like with what we're talking about today in Bryanna, in your moment, like before kids are coming to kindergarten, they're expected to know more, to be ready for kindergarten. It is preschool. It's not just it's not daycare, right?
Right.
There's
academic
preparation.
content that goes along with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was going to just say, just to embrace your reading things. One is the Children's Cooperative Book Center out of the University of Wisconsin has lots of lists. So like if kids aren't into reading, maybe just they need more books. And I know that the Children's Cooperative Book Center out of the university puts out like all these sorts of like, hey, here's some awesome books that you might not be aware of. And it's just a good place to find books for all kids. Also too, just, if you haven't been around your public library, and your public library probably has access to the Libby app. So you can get access to like books on tape and all sorts of different things, or even like electronic books that you can send to your Kindle for free. So there's easy getting to your libraries. And if not, you got the apps like Libby that you can access as well. So everybody should read. Just providing kids access to books is awesome. So, all right. Anything else? I think we're doing pretty good. All right. Hey, Bryanna, thank you for sharing a mile marker on your road to better teaching.
Thank y'all for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on. And thanks to all of you for joining us. And remember, the road to better teaching goes on forever, and the joy of learning never ends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Rate and review the podcast. It really helps others find these stories, and share it with a colleague or friend who's on their own journey in education.
You can find today's show notes and all the links we mentioned at roadtobetterteaching.com. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to each of you traveling this journey of becoming and growing as an educator. The world is a better place because you are sharing the gifts you've been given to teach others.
The Road to Better Teaching is supported by Amazon Planet.